Howardena Pindell and the use of critical race theory and feminism as abstract expression. Who is Howardena Pindell? Howardena Pindell was born in Philadelphia in 1943. She grew up during segregation and frequently experienced racial discrimination as a child. These experiences later became the central point of her artistic practice. She studied painting in Boston University and later worked at the Museum of Modern Art in New York from 1967 to 1979. Although the position gave her access to the professional art world, it also exposed her to the ever-present racism and sexism embedded within galleries. She often found that she was excluded socially and professionally, despite all her accomplishments. These institutional experiences within the art world were important to her because they shaped her understanding of the art world as a system structured by white male dominance. Theories that make up her work. There are many different theories that I feel further expand Pindell's work, but the outlooks of critical race theory and black feminist theory help explain her work the best. This is because a lot of her work across many mediums are about her personal struggles and experiences as a black woman facing unjust treatment. Expression through the arts. Pindell holds a special place within the contemporary American art space as her work confronts the complex realities of racism, sexism, and memory, while also using her work as an outlet for her own personal traumas. Through her career, Pindell has used many forms of art, including abstraction, collage, video, and written works. Her work challenges the present assumption that abstraction is detached from politics. She transformed the abstract visual language into deeply interpersonal and political forms, while also exploring racial identity and her personal traumas. She demonstrates how any form can function simultaneously as a memory, testimony, and a critique. Understanding Pindell's work, the short film Work, Free, White, and 21. Before diving into the context of the video itself, I would like to take a moment to discuss Pindell's history making the video. Quote from White Cube Gallery. In 1979, Pindell experienced a life-altering event when she was involved in a near-fatal car accident, in which she sustained head trauma and partial memory loss. To aid in her rehabilitation and as a means of catharsis during this difficult period of recovery, the artist worked to consolidate fragments of her past. This effort initiated her series of autobiography works in 1980, mixed media paintings, and works on paper for which she meticulously collected postcards and photographs from decades of her life, mementos from travels and memories of her past self, which assumed renewed renaissance. Another quote that's beneficial comes from the College of Fine Arts Landmarks. Quote, during her recovery, she began gathering and reassembling fragments of her past as a form of both rehabilitation and reflection, an effort that led to the autobiography series, on which Landmarks project is based. At the same time, Pindell's Untitled series in the 1970s and 80s featured meticulously constructed paintings and collages composed of thousands of hand-punched paper dots that are stitched and layered across the surface. I highlight these quotes specifically before digesting the video itself because it represents how Pindell goes through a trauma, whether it be physical or emotional, and processes her experiences through the arts, which will eventually evolve into her Untitled series we will discuss shortly. In the video Work, Free, White, and 21, Pindell directly addresses racism, sexism, and the silencing of black women across media. She recounts personal experiences of discrimination while also portraying a white female character who dismisses her testimony while using a blonde wig and white face makeup. The second character repeatedly accuses Pindell of exaggeration and paranoia. The structure of said video reveals how institutions evaluate the experiences of marginalized individuals, in this case people of color. Every traumatic memory is immediately denied by the white character, exposing the mechanisms through which racism becomes invisible to those who benefit from it. By embodying both herself and the dismissive white character, Pindell exposes the insustainability of racial identity while revealing the power structures behind representation. The emotional intensity of this video comes from its autobiographical honesty. Pindell recounts incidents from her childhood and adulthood life, including racist emotional barriers and discrimination within professional institutions. These stories transform her works across all mediums into her own personal testimony. Unlike traditional documentaries, This video uses the performances to expose the psychological violence of denial. This video was controversial when it was first exhibited because many viewers resisted the critiques of both racism and white feminism, yet this resistance only strengthened the arguments Pindell was aiming to make. She demonstrated that institutions claiming they were naturally progressive often reproduce systems of exclusion without realizing it. Pindell demonstrates that racism and sexism cannot be separated because the dismissal she experiences comes not only from white men, but also from white feminists who are unwilling to confront racial inequity. The white female character in the video represents a form of feminism that demands gender equality while ignoring the racial oppression. The video also reflects Kimberly Crenshaw's concepts of intersectionality, which gives a strong insight to the work as well. Quote from Mapping the Margins: Intersectionality, Identity, Politics, and Violence Against Women of Color. Quote, I consider intersectionality a provisional concept linking contemporary politics with postmodern theory. Understanding Pindell's work, the historical traumas. Critical race theory in specific helps illuminate this aspect of Pindell's work by encouraging the argument that racism is not simply individual prejudice, but a structural system embodied in institutions, laws, culture, and memory. Pindell visualizes her idea by connecting contemporary experiences of her historical violence. Her works insist that the trauma experienced by slavery continues to shape Black identity in the present day. Understanding Pindell's work, the abstract. As stated before, one of the most important aspects of Pindell's career is her use of abstraction. During the 1970s, she created intricate abstract works composed of punched paper circles, layering surface, glitter, and textured materials. It is easy to assume works are detached from politics because they lacked obvious figurative imagery. However, Pindell later explained that the repetitive labor and fragment surfaces reflected emotional and psychological states connected to memory and identity. Quote from the Met. Pindell combines abstractions with pattern and decorative elements such as numbers, arrows, and other personal references that reflect her influences such as African art, life experiences, and political activism. Forms associated with minimalist and post-minimalist art, such as grids and numbers, becomes emboweled with personal meaning as her father was a mathematician. Another quote that's beneficial comes from The Nations. Assuming her abstract pieces aren't related to race or politics would be a mistake though. At the end of the day, Pindell is a Black woman making work in spaces that were unwelcoming to her, and that has to have an impact on the things that she was thinking about and doing, Wolford said. Pindell's use of circular paper dots is especially significant because the repeated forms suggest accumulation, fragmentation, and bodily traces. Quote from Cultured. The dots that are so prevalent in her work today are based on a memory from her childhood, when she stopped with her father at a root beer stand in Kentucky and the bottoms of their mugs were stamped with red circles to distinguish them from those used by white customers. End quote. Furthermore, the overwhelming density of the materials reflects emotional intensity while simultaneously revealing the labor behind the artwork. Her layered composition suggests identities broken apart by systematic racism and violence, yet it is continuously reconstructed through artistic recognition. Frantz Fanon's theories on critical race and psychological fragments provide another useful outlook into her work. In the book Black Skin, White Mask, he expresses how racism fractures personal identity by forcing Black individuals to experience themselves through the lens of, quote, whiteness. Quote, all round me, the white man above the sky tears at its navel. The earth wraps under my feet, and there is a white song, all this whiteness that burns me. End quote. Understanding Pindell's work, the short film Rope, Fire, Water. Pindell's 2020 video, Rope, Fire, Water, continues this exploration of historical violence. This video examines segregation and racial terror within the United States while connecting past violence to the contemporary police brutality. The title itself references the methods of racialized violence used against Black Americans throughout history. The video combines documentary images, statistics, and spoken narration, created an overwhelming archive of racial trauma, yet Pindell also includes memory of beauty and abstraction, suggesting the persistence of survival. Throughout the 1980s and later in her career, Pindell began to lean more into historical memory and/or collective traumas. Works such as her mixed paintings titled Autobiography, Water Ancestors, Middle Passage Family Ghost connects her personal memory to the history of slavery and African dysmorphia. In this work, Pindell outlines her own body while surrounding it with layered imagery connected to water displacement and ancestral memory. The reference to the Middle Passage is particularly significant because it links personal identity to the collective historical trauma. Pindell suggests that contemporary racial violence cannot be separated from the history of slavery. In her work, water functions as both memory and a burial site, recalling millions of Africans who died during the transatlantic transport. Final thoughts. To summarize, Howardena Pindell is an exceptional artist with a plethora of talents, but her work doesn't end at the edge of the canvas. Pindell's work encourages the viewer to have further conversation about race and discrimination within the art field. The theories we have discussed throughout the semester gives us the ability to comprehend these concepts more in depth than we could before.